Greetings everyone, welcome to this newest lesson. I am excited and I hope you'll enjoy it and learn a lot from it. We're going to go straight to it and go over the materials needed for today. I'm using a 16 by 20 inch canvas and we're doing portrait style. And of course you can, do it landscape, whatever you're comfortable with. That's just the way I chose to do it, but you can create it in your own way, okay? And this is already pre-gessoed and ready to go, so I don't need to put anything on it. For paints, we're going to use my acrylics here. This is a 24 set right here, and I'll show you which colors we're going to use from this set. We need medium yellow, viridian, cerulean blue, phthalo blue, crimson red, and lamp black. From my 5 set, we're going to use titanium white. For brushes, we're going to use a couple of these M1 blending brushes. One I like to use to dab in the water, pick up some paint, and lay it out really quick where I want it to have a nice smooth blend. Once I'm done, I leave it in the water jar and then pick up my dry one and softly blend everything in. And I'll show you how to do that. So we need 2 of these. In smaller sections, I might be using this M2 blending brush. It's a size smaller. And then my 4-piece brush set, and I'll show you what is in here. Number 8, right here. It's a little rough, but it's kind of flat, like filbert style. Really good for adding trees, adding the effects for trees, bushes, and just kind of blending certain smaller sections in, okay? So that's in there. And then also this is a number 4, this is a size smaller, same idea, okay? And then a 1/2 inch flat brush. And of course, a 0 detail brush for the details. We need palette of some sort, and I like to use palette paper right here, because once you're done, there's 40 sheets, and once you're done, you just tear up one sheet and start fresh with the next one, okay? So something like that. We need a jar of water and a palette knife to mix your paint, and then some paper towels to wipe your palette knife and dab your number 8 or dab your brushes slightly on here if you use too much water. Now this is not necessary, but if you have a hairball dryer to dry out your first coats, I like to do that part when I do the blending part. So when I cover my blend of the sky, I like to dry it out before adding any more details onto it, because when I'm working, if I'm working wet on wet, like it can take off, it will take off the background, and then you'll start seeing the canvas showing through. You wanna wait till it dries before adding more details, okay? So use this if you have it. If you don't, that's okay. Just wait about 20-30 minutes and it should be pretty dry, which will be probably a good time to take a break, maybe wash your blending brushes, and I'll show you guys the steps that I do. And I'm sure those of you that took my lessons already know this process, but for the ones that are new here, I like to kind of show them and repeat step by step, okay? Alright guys, I believe that would be all for the materials. Everything I'm using, including canvases, palette paper, my paints, and brushes, are available at ColorByFeliks.com if you're interested. But again, use whatever you got available, have fun with this, and create it in your own way, in your own style, and use what you got available. Alright, I'm going to quickly explain how we're going to create this piece together. And I like to work in sections so that you won't be, overwhelmed by the whole idea of creating a painting. You don't know where to start and all that. I like to work in sections because then I can focus on certain parts and not have my mind go crazy all over the place. So that's why I'll explain what we're going to do. So the first section is just the blend. Focus on the blend, focus on your mixing of the colors, which I'll be showing you guys, and we're going to be doing it together. And we're going to create a nice blend of like this like a bluish, maybe like a greenish bluish sky going into a dark sky right here. It's almost like an evening setting, okay? And then we're gonna have a moon somewhere in the middle, and then a big mountain here with nice snow on it, and some trees on the bottom. Should be pretty simple, but the first section is the blend of the sky, and then we're gonna move on to the mountain. We're gonna quickly sketch out the mountain and focus only on the mountain, add all the details we want on it, and then we're gonna focus on whatever's the closest, which are our trees here. And then we're gonna get that. Also, I'm gonna add a few clouds here to make it more interesting after I finish the mountain. And then, so basically all those parts that I explained are sections, and I'll be mixing paint to the sections I'm working on, okay? So that all those parts, you can take breaks in between and come back to it the next day. Or if you wanna paint like me today, finish everything in one day, then you can do that as well. Use, totally up to you. Enjoy the process, and I encourage you to take breaks, because then you won't notice that you're becoming a little hungry or something along the way. You'll just have fun with it, have some music playing or whatever you want to have in the background, and enjoy the process. I always encourage you guys this, but that's the process. Let's go straight to it and to our palette and mix our shades for the sky first. All right, here we have our palette. Let's pick up the first color, titanium white. We're gonna try to create about 4 shades, okay? And if we need to, we'll add more, but let's start with 4. So I'm gonna create 4 piles of white, okay? And we're gonna start from this corner here and create about, I would say about 2 thumbs amount, okay? 2 thumbs amount of white. And if we need to, we'll add more. I would say about the same amount here, maybe a little less, and then a little less here, and then a smaller amount here, okay? So each time you go a little less, okay? There you go, that's white. I'm creating basically from lightest to darkest. So I'm gonna pick up Viridian, and I'm gonna add a small little drop here, very small amount, like this, okay? Maybe a little bit here, and that's it. And now let's pick up Cerulean Blue, and then add about a little more here, okay, about this much, and then a little bit more on this one, and on this one, okay, about that much, somewhere there. And like I said, we'll add more if we need to. Let's continue. Let's use Phthalo Blue, and I'm not gonna add it there. I think that's good. And there, I'm gonna add a little bit here, a small touch right there, and then a little bit, like a thumb amount here. Okay, maybe a little more. Okay, maybe actually a little bit more here. So something like that. So now I'm gonna pick up Lamb Black, and I'm gonna add a touch right here, a small touch, because black is a strong color. So I'm gonna add a very small touch there at the end. And quickly, I'm gonna mix everything from lightest to darkest, okay? So I'm gonna start from this shade and start mixing like this, okay? I like to kind of bring it all together like this and kind of chop like vegetables, okay? Quickly mix that. Make sure it's all mixed in, so you don't need to spend too much time on it, but just make sure it's all mixed in. All right, so I finished mixing them real quick. You could see that it's starting to go from light to dark. So I'm going to do that to all these colors here real quick. That's what we want. If your color is a little bit dark, like let's say, and then I like to pile it in one. If this is the color you got, like let's say right here, or even right there, right? You want to add a little bit of white to create a smoother transition. When you do that. Now, if you mix your colors smooth here, they're not intensely like too different, you know, like the color jumps are not too different, then the blend on the canvas is going to be a lot easier, and you're going to enjoy the blending part a lot easier, you know. So that's why it's important to have your colors mix the way you want them in the sky and have a smooth transition from lightest to darkest. That's what we have here. I didn't need to add anything because I liked the way it looked. This is like, remember, evening sky, so it's like the top of the canvas. This is the darkest, right? Because we're going to also add a little moon there, so we don't want the sky to be too bright, but we do want to create a nice shade from this light to the darker color of the sky. Okay, so something like this. It doesn't have to look exactly like mine. Okay, it could have, your colors could be a little bit different, and that's totally okay. All right, so next, this process is going to be pretty quick because the blending process, once you catch the technique, it's actually very fast and pretty quick and easy once you catch the technique. So I encourage you to practice this process, something similar like this with different colors, and learn to use the blending brushes. And once you like I said, perfect the technique, it's going to be a quick process. So now we're going to cover about half the canvas here. Remember, there's going to be a mountain right somewhere in the middle here, so, but we're just going to guess and cover it like halfway through. Okay, so this portion and up, we're going to start blending the lightest colors here to the darkest. Okay, so next we need somewhere, so our water jar, right, we need it somewhere next to us. Okay, so put it somewhere where it's easy to access, right? And then we need one of the M1 blending brushes. Choose one. Okay, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna dab our blending brush all the way in the water. Okay, soak it up with water and then squeeze part of it out. Okay, like this, so that water won't be dripping, but there is some water still in here. And the reason why I do this is because water actually helps the acrylics from drying too fast. So water gives a little bit more time, and I found that water helps naturally, like it doesn't leave any, I used mediums before, it doesn't leave any chunkiness, or some places are glossy or matte, or you know what I mean. I don't know if you faced that problem, but I've used mediums before and it created that problem. But when I mastered the technique of using the water, right, it creates a nice dry solid blend and it looks great. So water, I think, works the best. So again, have the water jar somewhere next to you. Okay. And the reason why I say the water to be next to you is because whenever I'm picking up my colors, I like to, just the tip of my blending brush, I like to kind of dab it in the water lightly and pick up my next color and colors, and just kind of continue that process back and forth. Okay, and I'll be explaining as I'm doing it and showing you how I do it. Okay, so my water is right here below, so I'm going to be dabbing it like this. So here's my colors, right, from lightest to darkest. We're going to start with the lightest, and so again, and basically, let me show you real quick. So basically the water right here, right, and I'm just dabbing it lightly in the water, not all the way, just lightly right here, so my tip can have a little bit more water if I need it. Okay, so I'll be sharing that. Again, this process is a little bit faster, but don't worry, we're gonna follow along together. So I'm gonna pick up my lightest color, make sure you got paint like this randomly right all over your brush, and we're going to cover the middle section with this lighter color. Okay, so let's start from this side. Let's just add it all randomly right here. Okay, add it randomly. I'm gonna dab my tip lightly in the water and pick up more of this lighter color. Okay, dabbing the tip in the water, picking up more of this lighter blue color, and I'm spreading it lightly like this everywhere evenly. Okay, you don't want chunks to be, your chunk of paint to be in one section. That's why I kind of swirl it. I lay it out and I swirl it. So just cover the middle section, make sure everything's laid out. And you see the bubbles? That's good. That's a good sign. That means we have enough water there, right? But it's not too much. We don't want too much bubbles or water running down too much, okay? So dab the water. Again, I'm dabbing my brush, picking up more of this color and laying it down right here on the bottom, covering this section like this. And again, some of this is going to be covered with mountains. So, and then dabbing my water, brush in the water, picking up my next color, next, and then picking up more. I don't need to dab my brush in the water. I feel that I have enough water already, so I'm just gonna randomly add it right there. Dabbing my brush in the water, picking up more of this color and putting it, and I'm creating like the rainbow kind of blending, like I'm adding it like this, okay? Like that. There you go. Make sure it's all blended nicely. Okay, dab my brush in the water. Let's go with the next color. Don't worry about the leftover color. We're going to try to use that up somehow, okay? And let's add it next. So next, right below, on top of that. Even bring it down if you need to. So dab my brush in the water, pick up more of this color, and swirl it and put it on the bottom here. Bring it down a little bit. Okay, dab my brush in the water and pick up more of this color and add it on top right here. Okay. Okay, I'm going to pick up more of this color and add it right on top right here. Okay, dab my brush in the water, just a touch. Pick up more of this color and add it evenly right here. That's good. Okay, evenly spread it like this. And now what we're gonna do is pick up our last color. All right, dab it in the water. And let's pick up this last darkest color and start adding it. Okay, dab my brush in the water, just the tip, and then create like a rainbow kind of effect. Bring it down if you have to. Dab my brush in the water again and add it right there. Okay. And we're gonna bring it down. Don't worry about mixing all the colors in together. That's the point. That's how you get a nice blend. So we just want to cover the sky. Okay. So dab lightly in the water. You don't need to dab your brush in the water if you have enough water, okay? So just make sure it's not too much water, but enough. So dab my brush lightly, barely touching in the water, and then add the final area right here. Okay, so I'm gonna try to evenly spread this, and then I'm gonna try to bring this color down a little bit like this. Okay, and it's okay, it's gonna look a little messy, but that's okay. Okay, you don't maybe need to do this part, but you can actually. So you could see my my paint is still wet. I'm gonna put this brush in the water, put my palette down, and pick up my second blending brush and work dry. So this is the fun part. So we're gonna start from the lightest area and lightly press and swirl. Okay, use your wrist and just swirl, kind of blend and swirl. Okay, starting from the lighter area and lightly. Don't force it. You know, just lightly swirl it like you're putting on makeup on your face. I mean, I don't know. I see my wife put on makeup, so it's something like that. Okay. Blend. I've heard people say they used makeup brushes before, which is pretty cool. I never tried makeup brushes for this part, but you can totally try it, see what happens. And you could see the nice blend starting to happen. Okay, nice blend. And I'm working my way up slowly, so I'm lightly blending. All right, so once you have everything blended, right? We're gonna clean our brushes so that they won't sit in the water too long, and get a new water. And while this dries, and then the remainder, whatever is not dry, I'll use a hair blow dryer to finish it up, and then we'll continue to the next section. Also, I want to remind you, if you lose a few hairs, this happens especially when the brush is super new, because it's super thin hair and it's soft, so some of the brushes might come loose. You'll see it. Leave them. Focus on the blending, okay? Very easy technique. So basically, once it dries, you know, I like to use a hair blow dryer. Once it dries, it basically sucks up the paint and it dries. So then the brush, some of the hairs, you just lightly scratch it off and they come off pretty easily, okay? And then it doesn't damage the paint or doesn't damage your you know, background. And that's really how it works. So it's not a big problem, okay? So don't focus on trying to pluck the hairs out of the you know, the wet paint, because it's going to be kind of frustrating. All right, so just leave them there. Focus on getting a smooth blend. Okay, so I got water and my brushes are clean. The blending brushes, they're drying out now, but I can move on now or take a break. I quickly dried everything out, so everything is dry now and ready to go for me to add another layer. Also, I never mentioned this before, but another, you know, just an idea. Sometimes I do that barely, but sometimes I do that. So what I'd like to do is, once I get the blend down, sometimes I don't know how it's going to turn out. You know, I'm still learning as well as I go. And sometimes I blend and I like it the way it turns out. It works out really good. And sometimes I see certain areas where I see like, oh man, I wish this blended well after it dried out, you know. But I come up with ideas like adding clouds to cover that section. You know, if certain areas, like certain spots where I don't like, I just kind of add a cloud or whatever to make it, you know, to clear that area out. Or other times, if I want to leave the sky clear, then I would do the same process again and blend everything out, do basically the same process, starting again from mixing my colors, or if I have some left over, do it again. And actually the second time when you do it again, it works smoother, because now you got the first base down, right? So it blends nicer too. So that's just an option. You don't need to do this, but just an idea for future. So we're not going to do that today, obviously. We're going to continue. I like the way it turned out. And what we're going to do is focus on the moon, and I'm going to add some stars. Now there's different waves I've taught before where you can flick it with white and a little bit of water, and you can flit with a flat brush, right, lightly, to create like little stars. Today I'm not going to focus on the stars too much, but I am going to use my detail brush with some white and maybe a touch of blue to add a few little stars. Okay, some will be a little bigger, just add a few stars, and then a little moon here. Okay, and then we'll continue with the mountain. So for the stars, you could see I lightly added a little bit of white and a small touch of medium yellow with white. Okay, and unfortunately, usually I like to use up my paint. I don't like to leave paint. Unfortunately, sometimes I don't know what to do. I don't know how to use it in my artwork. Like most of the time I do, but for this one, surprisingly, unfortunately, I'm not gonna use some of these paints. I'm gonna have to get rid of it, but I will do my best. So like for example, a little bit of blue, I'm gonna mix that in with this white to give me some star effect. So it'll have some blue. It won't stand out too much. Okay, but it is lighter than this color, okay? So there you have it. And then here, I'm not gonna clean my palette knife. I'm just gonna mix that in. That'll be our moon color, and then I will also add a white just on the side, just straight from the tube right here. And I'm gonna be playing with these colors for the moon and stars, okay? So let's do that real quick. Let's add a little bit of white on our palette. And let's start off with adding, and I always like to clean my palette knife with paper towel so that the paint won't dry, right? Dab it in the water all the way and clean it out like that. Very fast, easy. Alright, so our detail brush, and let's start with this light blue that we have mixed, right, with this color. And just a small touch of that blue, but not too much. And then we're gonna just take part of this color, very small amount, dab your detail brush in the water and swirl it, you know, and then to get a nice fine tip. And we're gonna just add stars where we want them, very, very lightly, very small, okay? Just lightly dab it, and some can be bigger than others, okay? Some can be a little bigger, but I'm gonna add a few. I'm not gonna overdo it, but add a few. Some can be, like I said, a little bigger. Okay, so make sure you spread it evenly and that it looks nice everywhere. So I'm gonna spend some time doing that, okay? And I'm barely pressing the canvas. Barely pressing. Okay, maybe another one right here. Swirl your brush if it doesn't give you that more of a circular effect. And lightly press. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to spend a little bit of time covering where I want it to be. Okay, so I added more than I expected, but basically something like this, you could add a few or more, as much as you want, basically. I didn't go all the way down. I stopped like right here because this will be like further away, maybe a little misty, so it disappears here. So just maybe this part of the sky, okay? Remember, our moon is going to be somewhere here. We're going to do that right now. So I clean my detail brush and I'm going to sketch it out. Remember, with that like a lighter, like greenish color. Let's dab our brush in the water and then pick up that color, swirl it on your paper palette, and then so you can get a nice tip. And we're gonna just eyeball it, basically try to center it. You don't have to center it if you want it on the side, basically up to you. I'm gonna try to center it and have it added somewhere in here, okay? So I'm going to go about somewhere in here. So I'm gonna go from here. So I'm just guessing, I'm looking, trying to center it right here. And I'm gonna go. Now you could use a cap of some sort to sketch out your moon, if that makes it easier. You know, put like a cap the size you want it and just kind of outline it and sketch it out if you want. Use it like as a template if you want. But I'm just gonna quickly sketch it out like this. And then, you know, create my details. Once I added a sketch, I like to just go back and define everything. Okay, something like this. Light is going to be from the right side going in here on our mountain. Now you can paint a moon, a full moon. You could totally have fun with this. Make a full circle if you want. Totally up to you, okay? I decided to go and add a big little moon here showing in the sky. Okay, so I'm picking up more color and using some water and kind of sketching it out first. Okay, with this color. Now you can walk around, use your, flip the canvas around, try to move it around and draw it out the way you, to make it perfectly round. So if you want to do that. I usually do that actually, but for teaching purposes and so you guys can see exactly what I'm doing, I'm just showing you how I sketch it out and then go back and do the details. So then I try to obviously correct. All right, so I'm gonna spend a little bit of time making this moon nice, more detailed. Okay, so this part, as I was correcting my moon, I realized I went overboard here, so I'm just correcting, and actually I'm glad that I have the blue left over because now I can play with this color and the darker color and some water, and I will mess around, try to match this blue, and if it's a little off, that's okay. But I'm gonna try to blend it and correct it here to create a smooth transition like this from there to the edges, to the moon, and then also here I overdid it, so that's what I'm gonna do. Just correct my and that's what I do. I usually just, eyeball it and go back and forth and correct things and work my way to trying to make it as detailed as I could. So I'm going to spend some time doing that, okay? But that's what I basically did. I added the details and now I'm just filling in and correcting. So once you're done, a little too dark, so I'm going to mix the lighter blue and there you go. That's much more like it. Take away the stars. There shouldn't be stars around in the middle here. Okay, so once you're done adding your details, like I said, I was kind of trying to smooth and get the colors from surrounding to, fill in this area and create a nice smooth transition, right? Once you're happy with your moon, then let's use that white, remember, straight out of the tube, that white. Make sure your tip is very pointy, okay, with white. And around the right side of the edge, we're just gonna add that light white. Oops, that's okay. And just add it around because that's where the light is hitting the most. Okay, just around as sharp as you can. Create that white on the right side. And once you did that, we are done with the moon and the stars. We are moving on to the mountains. Okay, let's move on to mixing colors for our mountain. And I'm going to start off with titanium white, okay? And then we're going to add the white also in the corner. And we're not going to try to add too much. Let's start with, actually, it's fine. Let's start with 2 thumbs amount. And then a little less here, okay? And then a touch, we'll do 4 shades, okay? So, and then amount somewhere around there. I don't know how it's gonna turn out. I'm just guessing, but something like this. And then let's pick up the cerulean blue, okay? Let's add a small touch right here and a small touch right here. That's it. And then, and actually let's add that blue a little bit more in here on the last one. Okay, and then let's pick up crimson red. Okay, crimson red. Let's add a small touch here, very small touch. Okay, and then a little bit more here. All right, and then let's add a little bit here and then a little bit here. So we'll mix and play around, and if I need to add any more, we will. Now let's pick up Lamb Black and let's add it. Let's add a touch in here and a little bit more in here. Okay, I added a little bit more in there, as you could see, and now we're gonna mix these real quick, starting from this color. Okay, we're gonna have a nice reflection of the pink snow, because we're gonna have some snow in the mountain, okay? And the sunset is on the right side, and so it's hitting and creating this beautiful reflection of the sunset. So that's why I'm adding more of like a reddish color to our snow. Okay, this one's gonna be a little bit more darker, but I'll look and see if I like it, and if I do, I'll leave it. But basically, quickly mix them, and we will add the base of our mountain and just be going over it with details. Okay, all right, let's move on to the next. Okay, so this one's a little bit too dark. And then the final will be the darkest, but I think I'm gonna add some white in here because I don't want the mountain to be super dark. I want it to be like still a little like, you know, light, because it's still in the background. So maybe a little bit more like this. And then I'm going to add more crimson. A little bit more crimson, just a touch right there. And let's add phthalo blue. A little touch. I want to make it look a little bit of like purplish. Let's see what that gives me. Okay. All right, that works. That works, but I'm thinking if I should make it lighter, even lighter. But I think, you know what, actually, I think we need more of, I'm just looking at this, I think let's create another color with phthalo blue. Okay, add white, and that's what I do. I kind of just sometimes add colors and mix them around and try to get the color I think will look cool in my mountains. I want a little bit more of the blue, not too much of the red. So I'm going to take part of this, but I want a little bit of the blue in the mountain as well. So that's why I'm going to mix it. Okay. That's nice. Okay. And I'm going to be playing around with these colors. I'm going to be playing around with these colors, but I'm going to look right now and see if I like the way the colors are turning out. And then I'm going to, what I'm going to do is add a little bit of, let's add a little bit of, actually, a little bit of yellow to our first one. Just a small touch. And then maybe here, a small touch right there. Because I want to, like I said, I want the snow to reflect the reflection of the sun, the sunset. So I'm going to clean my palette knife so I won't carry paint. And I'm going to mix that real quick. Okay, very small amount of yellow because yellow is strong, but that's nice right there. That's a nice snow color. Okay, it's like pinkish. And then I think here, I'm going to add a little bit more white. Actually, a little bit more like this. And you know what? And I'm going to actually take this color because I thought I needed it, but I don't. So I'm just going to mix all that in here. Mix it all and it's fine. We're just going to use these 4 colors for now. There you go. All right, my friends. So here's the colors, the 4 colors. What I did here, I basically add white and crimson red. It just mixed it in. Basically, I wanted more red. As you can see, this is more red and a little darker. So it's just white and crimson red. Just to play around, I might use that color, okay? But we might mix more along the way, but this is the base of our mountain colors, okay? And now let's, again, it doesn't have to be exactly like my colors here, but around there will be just fine. Okay, so our moon is somewhere in the middle right here. We're going to use our flat brush to sketch out our mountain first. We're going to dab it in the water all the way, flat brush, and then squeeze part of it out. And let's sketch our mountain. Okay, let's sketch it out using this color first, this one. So we're just going to take part of this color and dab our brush in the water, basically use it. Water helps to run smooth on the canvas. So a little bit of that color, and we're basically going to sketch our mountain the way we want it. Now I want my cliff to be somewhere, you know, in the center where the moon is, okay? So what I'm going to do is, and again, it doesn't have to look exactly like mine, okay? So I'm gonna start from here. I'm gonna have it go up. Actually, yeah, that's a fine color. It's gonna darken up. So I'm gonna have the mountain go up. To make it easier for you guys to see, I'm gonna go ahead and use this darker color right here, okay? So here it's gonna come down, and I want to make a little cliff right in here because that's fun to do. And then here I'm gonna add something fun. I'm gonna add some clouds here, so I'm not too worried about where it ends, but I think I'm gonna have it come down slowly and just have it fade out. So maybe even something like that. Again, this part's gonna be pretty covered with clouds, so I'm not too worried about this section. Okay, so I'm stepping back and seeing if I like my mountain, the shape of it. Okay, and I decided to make this a little bit more bigger and wider, like this. Now I'm going to do what I like to do is kind of fill in the shadows, the dark spots. So with the same color, we're going to fill in the darker spots real quick. Okay, some in here. I want this area to kind of go in like this. And then make this a little taller. Okay, and then here we're gonna have like a little and I'm just sketching it out real quick with water, the shadows of the rock, of the mountain. Roughly sketch it out. Okay, dab my brush in the water, use the same color for now. And then we're going to, so there will be like a little line right here. Okay, and there's going to be a lot of little shadows here. And then here is going to be where it gets a little bit more darker. Now it's going to go down. And I'm just, like I said, I'm just sketching it. It doesn't have to be perfect, okay? Just kind of add your shadows. And we will fix the rest later. So then here there will be like a little drop. Okay. I want some of them to come down here. Okay, this area, remember this area? I want it to come out like this, and then there. Now again, I'm just quickly sketching everything. This is just to give me an idea how it'll look. Okay, something like that. Some in here. Now it's going to come down pretty much all the way, almost all the way to the bottom. So the bottom is like 2 inches. Leave about 2 inches of canvas on the bottom, and we're gonna come and bring this mountain down. And it's okay if you have white showing through. This is the base. We're just gonna just sketch it out real quick. Okay, and then some in here. And fade it down, and then here, let's continue. Okay. Let's continue bringing this down. And then just gonna fade it out. Down. Something like this. All right. Now, I'm gonna actually put my flat brush down. Let me wash it in the water and put it down, not in the water. I don't put my flat brush in the water jar, so I'll have a nice fine hard edge and it won't damage it. So I like to quickly rinse it off and leave it flat. And then also the detail brush as well. I don't want it to be bent, so I just clean it real quick and put it on the only brushes I really leave are like the blending brushes or my number 4 and number 8 brush, okay? But let's pick up our number 8 brush this time, dab it in the water, soak it in so that it could be nice and damp. And then let's start to fill in some of this with our lightest color, okay, this one. And this is going to be like a sketch, okay? So quick, with water, quick sketch of like our snow. Okay. So I'm going to take it all the way up in there. So with this color, let's just randomly fill in the blues, the lighter areas, okay? Again, we're going to go over and add more details. But something like this, okay? So quickly fill in those areas. with water and the lightest color. And it's okay if you go over some of the darker shades. Like I said, this is the base, so I'm not too worried about that. So I'm adding where I think the lightest part of the snow will be. Okay, adding this color. Obviously this side of the mountain right here will have the most light because the light is hitting this side, right? So we'll add more. Let's first focus on filling this area real quick. And I'm just guessing, okay? You know how mountains can be always different in the shadows, so again, it doesn't have to look exactly like mine, okay? But something like this. Okay. All right, for now that's good. Now I'm gonna go to my next color. Remember this one? Let's use that color next. Dab my brush in the water. I don't need to clean my brush. And I'm gonna add some of this lighter, a darker reddish color, okay, on some of this. Remember, this side of the mountain has more of the shadows, so that's why I'm gonna try to fill in and kind of blend it out. And it's, again, it's okay if you cover part of the some of this darker part that we have mixed. We're going to go back and detail all that later. Okay, let's add a little bit of that here. Maybe even go over some of them. Like I said, all this is going to be covered. I mean, not covered, but we're going to add more details to them. And it's going to stand out and look nice. I'm going to add a little bit of the light color. That lightest color, mix it in. You see how I didn't wash my brush or clean it? And because I already have that pink, I can play with it. But don't worry too much about the details yet. We just want to sketch it out first. So I'm going to go ahead and use that and kind of fill in some of these, the areas where there's some blue showing. Okay. And bring some of that lighter color down. We're creating shadows. Okay. Use the lightest color again to add it on the bottom right here. And it's okay if you have that pink color going on. That's totally fine. Like I said, leave about 2 inches. We're going to add some trees on the bottom. basically covering all the leftover canvas that is showing through. Okay, so you can see it's a sketch, rough sketch. That's what we want, okay? All right, next, let's add that, remember that red, the other red that I've mixed? It's just white. It's basically almost the same color, it just has a little bit more red. I want to add it on some of these, just on some of them. Mainly on this side. Use a little bit of that red. And randomly go over some of these colors. Okay. Now I'm gonna clean out my brush, right? And remember that last color, that blue one? So this blue one right here, let's use that. And let's go over some of the darker areas with the blue right in here. Again, it's okay if you mix it in with the pinks and stuff. Totally fine. We're just adding some color. Base coat. Okay. And then maybe some in here. Some in here. And then this color, we're gonna create a nice, clouds on the bottom and on the side, but I'll show you. Okay, let's continue. I'll show you. So basically there'll be some clouds around here. So I'm just gonna quickly sketch it out, just to cover our, give it a base coat for our, bottom part. So I'm going to dab my brush in the water, pick up more of that blue, and let's cover everything. Again, there will be trees here on the bottom, but this will be a base coat. Okay, cover it all with that blue, and we'll fade it out in there somewhere. I could have used my M3 for this part, but okay, so now I'm going to go to, let's go to the lightest color that we have. Yes, I could have used my blending brush to do this too, the M3, but I decided to just work with this brush. So either one works, will work. Again, there'll be trees here, so I'm not worried about this bottom part. Create a little bit of the blend. Okay, I know it looks messy, but bear with me. This is part of the process, and it's going to look great once it's all done. So quickly mix all that lighter color a little bit. And here. here. Let's continue adding that lighter color. Okay, and let's just cover it with a dark color right here on the bottom. It doesn't matter this part because, like I said, there will be trees here. Okay, something like this. Nice base. Now we covered a whole canvas. That's great. And now I'm gonna step back and see what I need to start to define the colors. So we're gonna mix a few more colors, okay? All right, so let this dry, okay, the base coat, and let's take the remainder of that lighter color, and what I added is white and a touch of yellow, and I'm creating a brighter color, okay? Brighter color. Okay, because I'm adding a little bit of yellow because of the sunset, remember? We want to make that glow. So something like that. White and not too much yellow. You don't want a lot of yellow. You want to still keep it looking like pink. Okay, next I added some red and white. Let's just create a pink, light pink. Okay. Even lighter than these colors. More of details. Okay, like this. All the little details, start to add them. Okay. I'm going over some of this in here, but we obviously will go over that with a detail brush, but for now I thought it'd be good to just kind of start slowly adding more of the shape of our mountain and define it a little more. That's what we're doing. Okay, so here I'm gonna have it go in there somewhere like this. Okay. Okay, I'm going to use this color, and remember right here on the bottom, I'm going to add a little bit of that on some of these. Just on some of them. And this is totally up to you where you want your details to be, okay? For now, that's good. Clean my brush. Let's add this light color right here, light pink right here, that we mixed from our first color. And I want to add that in here. I'm going to go over, make this a little bigger here. pink color. Use that darker red color as well, because I want to make it look more. I want to add some red to this, you know. And I'm creating more like details now. And I do this like back and forth, you know. So I'm going to sketch it out a little bit right now, and then we're going to sketch it out a little bit more once I'm done, you know. And then we're going to do it back and forth until we're happy with it. And add where you want that red to shine through. Maybe in here a little bit. Okay. Let's add some in here. Okay, I'm gonna dab my brush in the water. And here I want to kind of drag it out like this. Create a few interesting and then maybe in here as well. With the red. Okay, and then a little bit of that red in here. Like I said, this part we're going to be covering, adding clouds in here, so I'm not too worried about this part. Let's use this color, remember this one right here, one of the darker ones. With the flat brush, let's make our mountain, detail it a little bit more. I want to make this a little bit more wider. Okay, step my brush in the water. And then we're gonna fade it out. Now we're gonna use our detail brush for all the little beautiful details, but I'm getting the kind of the base sketch of how I want it to look, right? So I'm gonna bring this down here. Okay, you could see it's starting to form, it's starting to look more defined, and that's what we want. We want to spend time. Remember this part right here, there's going to be a cloud here. I want to add a beautiful cloud here, so don't worry about adding too much detail around here, but just enough. So maybe a little bit of the darker color right in here, a little bit. Okay, let's add, mix it in, you know, I'm mixing this red with that blue because we want to blend it in. We don't want it to be so I'm going to go back to that blue, the transition to be intense, right? I'm going to add a few details here, and then there will be some soft clouds here. So I'm going to go back to the red, this kind of reddish color. And I'm not cleaning my brush. It's okay if it has blue or whatever color it has. Go over some of this. I want my mountains to have pink in them, mainly, like pinkish. Okay, that's what we want. Okay, and then we'll fade it out there. But for now, I like it. So far, it's good. I'm gonna clean my flat brush and switch to number 8. All right, so number 8 brush, it's clean. And remember these two colors we have mixed. Let's add the lightest color. Okay, the lightest color. And I'm gonna go over the parts where I think needs brighter color because of the sun, right? So I'm gonna add, and it's okay, like I said, if you go over some, it actually will soften some of your mountains, so it won't be too harsh. And let's just lightly add where we think would look really good. I'm not gonna add it everywhere, but wherever we think the light, you know, is hitting. So like maybe more in here, this area. Actually, you know what? Let's switch our brush to number 4. I think it'll be easier to add these little details in. So let's use the same color, doing the same thing. Okay, and now this is, like I said, we're starting to add a little more and more details to our mountain. We don't want to overdo it, so leave some of the background color that we have mixed, but you want to start to add a little more to the mountain. So here I'm going to add even go and try to all the way at the edge. Okay, that didn't have to be there, but that's okay. I'm going to continue with this light color and start adding my lighter shade. So here I'm gonna go down and skip and then add a little bit in here. Okay, to create a nice glow, a light glow. All right, so here I'm going to continue, and here I'm going to take some of the colors we have added and then clean a little bit of this side. And then here I'm going to use the other pink color we have mixed, but let's just focus on this color first. And here I want to clean up a little bit and create a little more details here with a lighter color. Okay, so maybe even go in and clean up in here a little bit. Okay, now we're defining our mountain. It's like sculpture. Let's add the light in the middle right here. I want to clean this area up a little bit with the lightest color. Remember, the light is hitting this side of the mountain, so it's creating a glow here. Remember, there'll be some clouds here, so don't worry too much about that area. And then here, I want to bring the light down and fade it out to this blue. Okay, and then a little bit in here. And let's continue adding some light in here. So let's add a little bit of that glow in here, coming down, fading out. And randomly fade it out in here. Okay, and Now I'm going to add a little bit more in here on this side. A little bit, not too much, because this place is more of the other side of the mountain, so I don't want this to be too bright, but a little bit won't hurt on some areas. So, for example, here. Okay, now let's move on to this pink color. Remember this pink color that we have mixed? Dab a brush. You don't need to clean your brush. Just dab it in the water. Tap it on the paper towel so it won't be too wet and nice and damp. And then use that pink to add right next to the lighter, some of the lighter areas. So for example here, I want to create more of this pink here. I think I added too much of the rock showing. Okay, make the lines a little bit more defined and sharper. Okay, and then here we can add a little bit of that pink in our mountain. Lightly. And then here. Let's clean your brush real quick in the water. And I'm going to use the darker, like a red, pink color, I mean. And I want to put it in here because I don't want this to be too light because it's in the shadows. But a little bit of that light won't hurt. Okay, something like this. Okay, now let's clean up our brush and let's go with this blue. Remember this blue one right here we added? Let's use a little bit of this blue, mix it in with a little bit of the pink, this pink right here, okay? Just a little bit. We want it still leaning towards blue. And I want to create some shadow, so I'm going to dip my brush slightly in the water and I want to create highlights of a little bit of that blue. Okay, like that. So not too much, but certain some areas, okay? Want to add the highlights. For example, right here, I want to add a little bit of, okay, something like that. Alright guys, so it was getting a little darker, so I decided to take a break and come back to it the next day. And so it's all dry. I'm gonna start with a clean palette, okay? And if you have the colors that we have mixed, you can continue using them. But I'm gonna continue adding a few more details to make my mountain look more detailed, you know, and before we continue on with adding clouds in the trees, right? So I'll explain what I added here. Added about a thumb amount of white, some red, a touch of red and white, and a little more red here, okay? And then red and phthalo blue here with a little bit of white, okay? And then touch of white, a touch of black, and more of phthalo blue here, okay? I'm gonna mix this, and basically I want my colors to have like some pink, light pink, and basically try to get similar kind of shades like I have here, okay? Again, if you already have the colors mixed, use the colors that you have, and whenever I say I'm going with a light one, use the light one that you have already mixed, okay? I'm just, again, starting to mix, and I always say this and remind you guys not to worry about having it exactly look like mine, okay? So I'm gonna quickly mix these colors and show you what I have. All right, so here you have it, light pink going to more of a darker pink, and then this violet, darker violet color, and then bluish, more leaning towards blue here, because we added black and phthalo and a touch of white. We don't want it to be too dark, so that's why adding more white. We still want the mountain to be kind of faded in a way and not too dark, okay? So add some white if it's too dark, these colors. And I also added white and just a touch of medium yellow. I'm going to take part of this pink here to give it more of like a peachy look. I'm going to add a little more white to this so it won't be too yellow. I want to add like a little bit more of the a little bit of the color of the sunset. Okay, so I added a touch of white, a little more, and that should do it. And here you have it. I have my colors all mixed, and I'm gonna continue adding details. Okay, something like this. All right, so I'm going to use my number 4, dab it all the way in the water, squeeze it out so it could be nice and damp. And let's continue using this pink, okay? And if you have the colors that we mixed last time, again, use the lightest pink color that you have mixed. And I want to create a little bit more of the pink in some of my mountain here, because I want this mountain to be kind of faded. I don't want it to be too bright. Again, you can always you know, if you like your mountain the way you like it, you could leave it as it is. You don't have to have it exactly like mine, okay? So I'm just kind of covering, going over, adding a little bit more pink. Okay, water and a little bit of water. You see how I have a touch of water here, and continue on with the pink, and I'm just adding it where I think the shadows are on the mountain, okay? There's no really right or wrong. Just keep in mind that this side is where the light, it should be a little bit more lighter, you know, and then maybe, you know, if there's like a little hill here, maybe on the right side of there should be more of the pink shadows, you know, and then the lighter ones are going to be like when it curves up the hill, so you know, you add the lighter color. Just keep that in mind and have fun with this. Add it where you think there's going to be some shadows, okay? There's going to be clouds on the bottom. Okay, continue on with that light pink. I'm covering it because I took a step back and I saw that I added too much of the light color, that bright light color, and that's okay. But I just thought I like the pink color. I like how it, you know, stands out with blue in the background. Looks interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and add that, more of the pink in here. Okay. Okay, I'm going to dab lightly my brush in the water. And I'm going to use a little bit of this darker red, okay, and go over some of the areas around here. Not everywhere, but just some areas where I think this color would look good. Okay. Maybe a little bit here on the bottom. I'm just guessing. I think that's good enough there. Okay, and now I'm going to dab my brush in the water and use this color again, this violet purplish color, and then go over on, you see it's a little darker, that's what we want. We're defining our mountain now. Go over some of this area right in here and add that darker violet color, and on this side as well. Okay, so I'm going to cover some of this side and let it go up a little bit in here. Okay, dab my brush in the water, use that violet color again. Let's add a little bit of it in here. Let's attach that like this. Okay. And I'm going to start to define the mountain a little bit more. And lightly dab it in the water and continue. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit more of this darker color. Let's add it right here. And now let's add a little bit more here. You see I didn't add everywhere. Like I'm not going everywhere, I just want certain parts to stand out. Let's add a little bit of that in here. There. Maybe on this side. Okay, that's good enough right there. For now, okay, I'm going to clean my brush and use the blue color, okay, this darkest blue, and I'm going to add it right in here, okay, right in here, and then maybe some See, it's our pretty much darkest shade. I'm not going over everything. I'm just kind of adding it where I think it will have the dark shadows in my mountains. Okay. For example, here, I want to darken this area. We're still adding details right here, for example. I'm going to darken this area. Okay. Lightly follow the mountain where you think the rock is showing. Okay. Let's add some on the side. That looks nice. We're starting to see our mountain come to life. That's what we want. All right, I'm not gonna overdo it. I'm gonna clean my brush, and what I'm gonna do is use this pinkish color, the second darker one, and I'm gonna try to go over some of this with a little bit of water and this pink. I'm going to try to kind of smooth out some of the edges of the darker spots where I added, right? And it's okay if you go over a little bit, but I want to make it a little bit smooth. Okay. Really quick. Maybe leave that as it is right there. But go over. Maybe use some purple right in here. Again, there will be clouds here, so I'm not going to spend too much time there. Okay, maybe in here to take the intensity out a little bit. Dab my brush in the water and go with the lighter pink, the lightest. And I'm going to try to add more of that lighter pink in here. Just back and forth. I know it's a process, but you know, like little details you add, you build up on it. You know, step back, take a look, and see if you like it. And it's just honestly, just that's the way I work, and I think that's the way to get work done. I mean, I think you just keep on stepping back, give it a few days if you need to, and have fun with it. Add your shadows, details, as much as you want on the mountain. Okay, I'm gonna add remember this color? Okay, I'm gonna go over some parts again and lighten certain areas. Okay, I'm gonna lightly add this color on certain spots. to have a little bit of water in your brush, and keep on playing with this lighter color. Lightly blend it out into that base coat of that blue that we added. And blend it out. All right. Add a little bit of more little details in here. Like that. All right, so let's put down our number 4 and start to add a little bit of final details to our mountain. And what we're going to do is, let's start with adding, so let's start with using, let's use this violet color, right? You could even bring it, the snow down like this. I mean the rocks down like this. Okay. Little cracks in the snow on certain areas. You could add little rocks peeking through the snow. Same color. Now as we get lower, we're going to use that darker blue, but let's just continue with this color first. Make some more rocks that are more intense. Maybe mix it in as you get some areas further back. We don't want the same color, so mix it in with the red. And just use this darker pink, and let's make it a little smoother. And if you overdid it, it's fine. Just go back, use your paint to kind of blend everything in. Okay. There's no right or wrong here. So I'm just mixing my dark red and that violet color for the back here. I'm not going to add too much here. I like the way it looks soft. And then go to your darkest blue color, this one, and with a detail brush doing the same thing here. As you get closer, add some more darker ones. Okay, a little bit more little details that the number 4 couldn't make. Okay, I'm going to clean my brush and use my number 4. And what I'm going to do here is use a little bit of this dark pink, okay, with water, and I'm going to smooth go over, maybe even the lightest pink, let's use that, and go over some of the details that we added from the top down. Okay, just go over them lightly. Here, I'm gonna actually cover a little bit for the, and add the pink. Just lightly go over some of these. And we'll be done with the mountain. We can always come back to it later. And then we're going to start adding the clouds. Okay? We can come back to this part later. Again, you can go back and forth with the light and the pink. Create all your details wherever you want it to be. Okay. Just going over it lightly on some of these areas so that it won't be too intense. I'm gonna dab my brush in water and use a little bit of this pink again, the light pink, and go over this one as well, lightly, so it won't be too dark. Okay, something like that. All right. I think I am ready for the next part. So I'm just gonna go over this area, and then remember, basically what I'm trying to do is make it look faded and then more intense colors and details here, because the mountain comes at you closer, so the closer things are, the more details and contrast you start to see, right? So we want to make it look from faded to more detailed. Okay, so that's why I'm going over with white, with water and this pink, and kind of going over everything from the top, maybe leaving some darker areas there, but lightly adding that pink from here, and then have it fade out to the darker areas. I'm not gonna overdo it right there. Okay. All right, I think that's good for now. Let's work on adding some, add a little bit here. Let's work on adding some clouds. All right, so what we're gonna do is this color, we're gonna use it. I added some white here, and I'm gonna mix it in to create a lighter color, okay? And this will be our cloud color. Okay, something like this. It's like a bluish grayish look to it, and we're gonna add some clouds around here. All right, so now I decided to add some white right here. You could see I'm gonna take part of it, and basically I want to make 3 different shades from lightest to darkest, so I'm just gonna create a little bit of a darker color here. Okay, like this. Maybe take a little bit more from here, and it doesn't have to look exactly like mine, remember that, but basically create a shade, like a grayish bluish shade from lightest to darkest. We're going to use these for some of the cloud parts, like I said. Okay, so let's start with this color, this middle color. Okay, and we're going to sketch out some of our clouds up in here. I want it to go about this high, so I'm just gonna slowly swirl with water and kind of create my faded clouds. And this part, it does not have to look exactly like mine, so just keep that in mind and have fun. We're gonna bring it up all the way, like I said, we're gonna bring it in here, and like fade it. Swirl and fade it out. And we're just going to cover all this area with this color. Yep, don't be afraid. I mean, if you like yours, you can leave it as it is, but I like to add a little bit of more interesting details to the painting, okay? And this will make it look very cool. All right, so I'm gonna probably skip here. Use maybe the lightest color and add it right here, cover it. All right. Go ahead with the lightest color. Let's bring it down, and I think I'm just gonna fade it out somewhere in here. So I'm gonna use a little bit of white straight out of the tube, just in case if I'm gonna mix it with the lightest color. So I'm gonna dab my brush lightly in the water, and I added a little bit of white and mix it just to create a even lighter shade, okay? A little bit lighter. And we're gonna have it go up and blend it in. It's gonna be covered here, you see? So white and a little bit of that lighter blue. Okay. Let's continue around these clouds here with that lighter blue and some white, and going over some of these clouds in here to create a smoother transition. Let's go with a blue, basically playing with this and this color here, okay? All right, so I'm gonna continue with the lightest blue and add it on top and then fade it out into the darker blue. Okay. Okay, now we're gonna add this darkest blue shade, and we're gonna add it on the bottom, right in here. Gonna have it come and fade out. So that darkest blue, just fade it out upwards like this. And you can use the lighter blue and blend it out. Make sure your brush is damp, then it blends well and easy. And dab my brush lightly in the water. Go ahead and use the lightest blue. Okay, and swirl and create a nice blend. Okay, so I'm gonna dab lightly my brush in the water and use the lightest blue with some white just to create a little bit of a lighter color. And on the bottom right here, I'm gonna blend it out a little bit, make it more smooth. Okay, and it's okay if you bring a little bit of that upwards in here. Cover this a little bit more. I want my cloud to be intense here. So with water and the blue. Okay, lightly dab my brush in the water, mix the white with white right here with this lightest blue, and we're going to try to smooth this area out a little bit more, make it a little more softer. Okay, use that lighter blue. We're going to create a little cloud going up in here a little bit. Okay, dab lightly my brush in the water, and I want to continue adding that cloud going in here and a little bit in here. Okay, and then here I'm gonna add, with the lightest blue, I'm gonna add some clouds around here. Some light clouds. So dab my brush lightly in the water, use the lightest blue again, and we're gonna create a few clouds spreading out on this side. Some lighter ones here. And it's okay, like I said, if you go up over a little bit and cover some in here, because these clouds are in front of this mountain, and I'm going to add a cloud in here. This bluish cloud. Okay, and let it come down and surround this area. Lightly dab my brush in the water and swirl the edges, blend the edges out, you know, to create a smoother transition. So add white a little bit to the lightest blue, and let's just create a smooth transition around here. Okay, so I'm gonna try to add a few more details here. Okay, and then I want to add some clouds right in here. There you go. Much better. So they look like they're almost like a, you know, a one cloud coming through. Okay. Bring a little bit of that blue cloud down. Okay, and then we're gonna add a little bit of that lighter blue in right in here. Let's just add it right in here. So dab my brush lightly in the water so we can run smooth and add the light blue cloud. There you go. Okay, we want to create a foggy look. Right here, and then same thing right in here. Lighter blue, and blend this part out. This is another cloud area. Okay. Let's pick this up a little bit and carry it right in here. Okay, use a little bit of the white and blue and blend the edges out lightly. There you go, and it's okay if you cover part of the mountain. Don't be afraid of doing that. Okay, now let's go to our middle blue, this one right here, and add it on the bottom right in here. Okay, I'm gonna create a little bit of a darker shade, kind of what we did right here. On some of this. Again, there's going to be trees here, so I'm not too worried about adding too much detail. But we just wanted to create a smooth clouds right here, foggy look on the bottom, right? So let's add, I think I'm going to leave the way it looks. I'm going to use the lighter blue around here. I kind of like how it's like faded, you know? So I'm going to add a little bit of the darker blue because I don't want just this area to be the darkest, but I kind of like how I added a little bit of dark here. Okay, so cover that. Okay, I brought the camera down so you guys can see what I'm doing right here. Basically the same thing, kind of same idea. Just add the darker color here, darker shade, and then we're going to fade it out into the lighter color. Creating a fade, smooth fade, and making it look misty. So lighter blue, and let's just blend it all in, mix it in with a darker. And that's good enough right there. Now I'm going to use that lightest blue, okay? And I'm going to add a little bit of that lightest blue in here. I'm going to create a smoother blend of this lighter blue right in here. So I'm going to dab my brush lightly in the water and add more of the blue in here. Maybe have it attached to that blue. And basically go over everything with the lighter blue, wherever you think needs to be, wherever you want your clouds to look, you know, wherever you want them to be, okay? Go over this area right here. I want it to be a little darker, so I'm going to add a little darker clouds in here. Maybe add a little bit of the darker blue here. Create a little separation here. Okay, and now for the final few touches, use the lighter blue and the pink, the lightest pink, okay? Blend those two colors together and go over some of the edges of the where the clouds are, the blue clouds, and kind of blend that pink with, not everywhere, but on some of them to make the clouds look even smoother, okay? So that's what we're going to do with a little bit of water. Basically taking away some of the intense clouds. So water and a little bit of that blue and pink, and let's just around the edges of the clouds create a more of a smooth look, okay, faded look. So it could look like a nice transition. So light pink. I'm going to add more of that light pink and blend it in here. See what it does? It creates a nice like blend into that blue. So make sure you have a little bit of water in your brush, and if it's too much water, dab it onto the paper towel. And I'm just trying to take away any hard edge or any areas that look sharp, trying to make it look smooth, more fluffy. So go over where you added the clouds, just around the clouds with that light pink and water. Okay, so same thing here. Let's add a little bit of that pink here. I'm gonna make it look nice and smooth, and this is basically the final few details of adding fog and clouds. Okay, make a nice blend. Okay, that's good right there. And I'm going to use that lightest yellow white color that we have mixed, and I want to create a few details. Make sure it's not too much. Go back and create a few lighter areas here. I still want that sun to shine through some of these areas and create a glow effect. Okay. Okay, once you're done adding the clouds where you want them to be, making them more smooth and blend using the light pink and light bluish, right? You can always come back to it and add more details later, but let's continue on. The final step is the section is to add the trees, and the trees shouldn't be too difficult. Should be pretty simple and straightforward. So what I added is a touch of white, like a little bit less than a thumb amount on both, and then a lot of viridian, you could see, and a touch of black here, and phthalo blue, and a touch of yellow, and then here I added a lot more black, phthalo blue, viridian, and yellow. Okay, so basically something like that. Okay, basically it's going to look pretty dark, leaning towards, you know, green, as you could see, obviously. We'll use that as one of our shadows to our trees. So I'm going to mix that up real quick, and then this will be very dark. You almost will not be able to tell. Basically, that will be our base coat. We'll start with this darker color here. Okay, just like right there. I'm actually going to take part of this darker color that we have mixed, mix it in with this. I think it's a little too bright. We want to make it look grayish and not too much color. Okay, maybe a little more even. Okay, something like this. Much better. So it'll still have the shade of green, but it's a hint, okay? Okay, right there. Much better. Next, we're gonna clean. I always clean my palette knife, okay? We're gonna use our flat brush, okay? Dab it in the water all the way and use the darkest color right here. And let's just sketch out where our trees are gonna be, okay? So I'm gonna have a tree right in here, some in here, and a lot of this is going to be covered, so I'm not going to worry too much on the bottom part. It's all going to be very dark. So I'm just randomly adding. Maybe there'll be one tall one that goes, I think I'll draw it right in here. Okay, and then some little ones. Another little taller one. Okay, and each time they go smaller and smaller, we're going to fade it out. And make it kind of go down. Something like that. Very nice and simple. Okay. And now I'm going to clean my brush, and what I'm going to do is pick up my detail brush and then draw some of the branches. For example, here, some of the branches that we think, and use water. So swirl it in your darkest color, and then let's add some branches randomly from side to side, and then fade it out because the bottom part is going to be pretty dark. We're going to make it super simple. Okay, just like that. And we're going to add more details later, but I'm just sketching it out real quick so you guys can get an idea. This one will be a nice tall tree, and we're just gonna add our beautiful details here to this tree. And then obviously it's gonna fade out. Okay, and then this. Some of them I'm going to leave, and then we're going to come back and detail them later. Okay, randomly. Just to give you an idea. We're going to add more of the skinnier trees later. For example, right here, add a bunch of little trees. Okay, and I'm not gonna, the last ones, I'm not gonna add too much there. I'm gonna pick up my number 4 and start detailing dry it out, okay, and start detailing with this darkest color. Okay, we're gonna pick up this darkest color and we're gonna lightly dab like this, okay, to create leaves and I'm gonna do it like, use it like this and then kind of move it around, okay? Start from the top like this and lightly press, okay? And skip as you go down, skip on some of these areas, okay? Skip some to create, okay? Very nice details. And then obviously as it goes down we're going to cover that all dark. You won't even be able to see it. So here I'm doing the same thing, lightly dabbing, following where I drew the branches, right? Kind of guessing. Okay, and it's going to fade out and disappear into the jungle. See? Let's do that here. On some of them I'm going to leave them, you know, won't add too much detail. I'll leave them, actually this one can be a little more fluffy. And this one too. Make it fluffy. And then the bottom we're going to use the number 8 to kind of cover that, so it won't take too much time. So this tallest one, let's add fun details to it. Very gently. Use more of the color, and I'm barely pressing. Okay, if I want more fluffier look, I dab a little harder, and it becomes a little more fluffier. But if you want more of like sharp and little details, you want to make sure you press very gently. And I'm going like creating like almost like a dabbing it, making like a happy smiley face effect, like this, dabbing it from one side to another. Okay, continue. Maybe there's some trees you can't see in the back. Okay, same thing here. Maybe there's some far away, further trees, because we're going lower and lower, okay? This one's going to be tall. I'm going to skip some. And fade it out. Okay, these are going to be barely any detail on them. continue. And we're gonna bring it all the way down. Okay, and fade it out, just like that. Okay, nice and simple and fast. All right, so now I'm looking at this. Take a step back and see if you like the way yours looks. You can correct, and obviously we'll come back to that. Let's just focus on covering everything with our number 8. So I dabbed it in the water, and I'm gonna use the same color, dark color that we have mixed, and let's just cover it all here. It's all gonna look pretty dark on the bottom. Okay, so let's just cover that. Bring it up a little bit more. Very nice and simple here. We're almost there, guys. Almost to the finish line. So basically I'm just covering it, everything, with this darker color. And I'm gonna let this dry before I add any more details, and then we'll continue. Okay? Alright, so now it's dry. I used a hair blow dryer to quickly dry out this base coat. You can see a sketch here. You can step back and see if you like your trees, and if you need to correct anything, go ahead and do that. So I'm going to use my detail brush, swirl it with water, and I'm going to define some of my trees. So maybe for this tree, maybe what I'm going to do is I'm going to, well, first I'm going to start from this corner so I won't smear the paint everywhere. I'm going to actually add some of, I think I'm going to add some maybe trees behind that are not as detailed. So I'm going to add a few more branches and details to some of my trees here. Basically going over it again. Okay. But adding more details. Maybe to make this one a little taller. And this one. Let's make this one a little taller. Maybe there's a tree right behind it. detail this tree. I'm going to go over and make it a little thicker here. Okay, make it a little thicker. Bring this up and make a little more branches. Maybe there's a tree right behind it, but it doesn't have much details on it. So it's just go straight up like that. Okay, so I'm going to spend time doing that with these trees, adding more detail, more trees and branches, all that along here. Okay, and then once you're done adding all your details, I added a few extra trees with some details. Totally have fun with this, you know, add them wherever you want it, okay? Now with that green, remember that green color right here, let's use our number 4, and we're going to just lightly go over some of the branches just to add more of a variety of color on our tree. Okay, very lightly. We don't want to overdo it. Okay. Maybe there's some in here that we can barely see. You could see I'm barely pressing, kind of going and guessing where the light might be hitting these trees. Okay, like I said, not everywhere. Just kind of follow along and guess where you think there might be some light shining through and the branches are. Okay. All the details. This is like the final step of the process. Okay, some will have a little more. You see for yourself, all right? We'll have a little more light on them. So if you have too much, dab it on the paper towel, and then you have that darker color too. You can, you know, correct it, cover it up again, and just add it where you think there should be the highlights. Now here it's going to be faded, so I don't want to overdo it over here. I'm just going to have it fade out. You can almost barely see what's going on there. Okay. Alright my friends, I'll be done for today. You can always come back and detail it and spend as much time as you want on this. I hope you had fun and enjoyed a lot and learned a lot from this lesson. Thank you for being here. I hope to see you guys next time. Take care and God bless.